We often mistake deep attachment to a person or a situation as a sign of kindness and sincerity. Yet at times, it is that very attachment that robs us of our inner peace. We remain in relationships that wound us, cling to circumstances that no longer serve us, driven by fear of loss, fear of loneliness, fear of being left behind. But Stoicism does not teach us to run away, nor does it celebrate emotional detachment. It points to something more vital. Letting go is not surrender. It is an act of awakening. It is the moment we step back, no longer allowing emotion to override reason, and begin to see life with greater clarity. This video does not call for the covering of emotions, but invites us to master them, so that every choice, whether to walk away from someone or step out of chaos, is rooted in self-command, compassion, and a spirit tempered by inner discipline. 1. Step back to see clearly. Distance is strength. There are moments in life when we feel caught in a storm, everything spinning around us, the mind in chaos, emotions surging, and we don't know whether to advance, retreat, or simply stand still. In such times, what matters most is not swift action, but giving ourselves a pause, a space quiet enough to see the true nature of what we're feeling. Stoicism calls this the work of reason, not immediate reaction, but a temporary retreat, not to avoid, but to observe. We've grown accustomed to reacting the moment we're triggered. A hurtful word, a cold glance, a situation that defies our expectations. We get swept away, as if we had no choice but to follow where our emotions lead. But the truth is, we always have another choice: to step back. That step is not weakness, as many believe. It is the mark of inner strength. It demands a rare kind of courage, the courage to withhold reaction, to admit that our emotions may be distorting reality, and to accept that what we need now is not victory in an argument, but peace within. Imagine being in a noisy room, loud music, laughter, people brushing past one another, and amid all that chaos, a gentle whisper emerges. It's your own inner voice. How could you hear it if you stayed in the crowd? How could you know what you truly need if you've never stepped out of the noise? Life is the same. We need pause, moments of separation from the unrelenting stream of events, so we can listen, understand, and choose with clarity instead of impulse. Distance is something modern life often neglects. We're pulled into work, social media, relationships, so much so that we rarely leave time for ourselves. Turning off the phone for an hour, walking without headphones, or simply sitting quietly on a porch, doing nothing. These may seem like wastes of time to most people today, but to one who walks the Stoic path, these are sacred acts of returning to the self. When we step back and observe our emotions like clouds drifting across the sky, we no longer become them. They no longer define who we are or dictate what we must do next. There's a truth not everyone is ready to accept. Reacting isn't always wisdom. More often, wisdom lies in knowing when to stay silent. And real silence is not the absence of speech, it's the absence of emotional control. Distance helps us see the boundary between what belongs to us and what doesn't, between others' emotions and our own. It allows us to ask, were those feelings truly mine, or just something I absorbed from the environment? Marcus Aurelius, the great Roman emperor and a central figure of Stoic thought, once wrote in his journal, if someone wrongs you, don't respond in haste. Ask yourself, has their action harmed your inner character? If not, there is no reason to lose your calm. A simple line, yet the fruit of long mental discipline against external sway. And the first step in that discipline is always the same: create distance. Think back to the times you lost control, anger, despair, regret. How often did those moments come because you reacted too quickly? How often did you wish you'd waited a little longer, thought a little more, or simply stepped out of the room for a breath of air? Those seemingly small moments, had they happened, might have saved a relationship, an opportunity, or your own sense of self-worth. That is the quiet power of distance. It not only calms us, it reveals the full picture, which emotion rarely allows us to see. Creating distance also sharpens our objectivity. Immersed in a situation, we favor ourselves, inflate our feelings, and distort the facts. But from the outside, from the vantage of a third observer, we better discern truth from illusion. Distance releases us from the trap of believing we are the center of everything, and reminds us the world does not orbit our passing moods. It teaches us that everything fades, every event, every emotion, and what endures is how we respond or choose not to. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, entangled by someone, or worn down by circumstance, don't act just yet. Step back. Make space, not to escape, but to see clearly. Who am I? What truly matters? And does my reaction reflect the person I aim to become? You may not find an answer right away, but the very act of pausing and listening, that alone is an act of deep awareness. In a world that rewards speed, noise, and constant engagement, stepping back is a quiet revolution. It's how we protect ourselves without harming others, how we preserve dignity, clarity, and even worth. But this time, for ourselves. And if you can do that once, then again, and turn it into a habit, you'll see. Distance doesn't make you lose anything. It helps you keep everything that truly matters. 2. Ask yourself, does this relationship help me grow? There's a truth many of us avoid. Not every relationship enters our life to stay. Some people arrive as gifts. They teach us love, healing, growth, but others show up as tests to stretch our endurance, sharpen our self-control, and ultimately, to leave. What matters is that we stay awake enough to discern the difference between a bond that nourishes and an attachment that poisons the soul. That is when we must ask a question that seems simple, but holds immense power. Is this relationship helping me grow? If answered honestly, that question becomes a compass, guiding us out of murky situations we cling to, out of habit, even as they cause repeated pain. Stoicism doesn't urge us to sever emotions or glorify apathy. It calls us to examine ourselves deeply and to choose long-term growth over short-term comfort. Because often, what slows our progress in life isn't failure, but relationships built with the wrong person at the wrong time. We often stay not because someone helps us evolve, but because they feel familiar. But that familiarity isn't safety. It's a comfort zone of pain we've endured so long. We've begun to call it normal. And when someone asks, "Why are you still in it?" all we can say is, "Because I'm used to it." Yet the Stoic refuses to settle for cycles of pain disguised as familiarity. They don't accept a life of merely managing wounds, keeping peace on the surface, or hiding inner emptiness. They force themselves to look deeper and ask the foundational question, is this person lifting me up or pulling me down? If someone constantly makes you question your worth, keeps you on edge, forces you to adjust just to earn their approval, what you have is not companionship, but inner conflict. Stoicism teaches that a right relationship is one where another's presence helps you become your better self, not through pressure, but through inspiration. They don't try to change you or hold you back. They're a mirror, reflecting your strengths and flaws, so you can see where you are in your journey. And if someone only leads you away from your core values, the next question must be, am I staying out of growth or out of fear? Fear of loneliness is the most common reason we hold on to relationships that no longer serve us. But Stoics view solitude not as punishment, but as an opportunity to deepen our relationship with ourselves. Epictetus once said, "If you feel lonely when you're alone, you're in poor company." It's a reminder that if you can't find peace in your own presence, no amount of company will ever make you feel truly seen. So instead of filling the void with half-hearted connections, the Stoic chooses to become whole. First, asking, "Does this relationship help me grow?" is also an act of respect, not just for yourself, but for the other person. Because when we keep someone around just out of routine, shared history, or fear of hurting them, we're sacrificing honesty in the relationship. The Stoic understands that true love must coexist with the freedom to be authentic, to speak truthfully, and to walk away when the paths no longer aligned. That isn't selfishness, it's human honesty, lived with dignity. To question the value of a relationship is like stopping to wipe the rearview mirror before continuing the drive. No one wants to navigate life with a clouded view, and no one should move forward in a relationship that makes them lose sight of who they are. When we dare to face reality, even when it hurts, we gain the chance to course correct and regain clarity. That's the first step toward healing, not through blame, but through self-reflection. And sometimes the answer doesn't come in words, but in a feeling, the lightness you sense at the thought of letting go. That is the signal that it may be time. A healthy relationship won't make you feel like you have to become someone else. It will be the space where you are allowed to be yourself, but a self in continual refinement. The Stoic doesn't seek perfect people to bond with. They seek those who share core values, who listen, who uplift, who stay silent when needed, and offer guidance when it counts. That's a relationship built on growth, not control, on freedom, not indulgence, on companionship, not dependency. And if, after all that reflection, you see that this relationship no longer brings you forward, no longer fuels your growth, then leaving is no longer an act of despair. It becomes an act of courage and self-respect. You're not abandoning the other person. You're choosing to return to yourself. 3. Speak up, but choose who's worth hearing it. One of the most common mistakes we make when emotionally overwhelmed is to bottle everything up, as if silence were a sign of strength. But in truth, silence isn't always resilience. Sometimes it's timely openness with the right person that becomes the turning point in seeing ourselves clearly again. Stoicism does not ask us to live closed off or isolated from the world. On the contrary, it teaches that knowledge, emotion, and reason are best illuminated through sincere dialogue with those wise enough to reflect us and deep enough to truly listen. The real question is not whether to speak, but to whom, when, and for what purpose. In moments of pain or confusion, our instinct is often to unload our emotions onto someone. We call, we text long messages, hoping that just saying it out loud will untangle the chaos within. But sometimes we choose the wrong person, the one who worsens the storm, fuels negative emotion, or listens only to judge rather than understand. Stoicism reminds us, not everyone deserves access to your emotional world. Emotion is delicate and should be entrusted only to those who can hold it, not those who will add weight to your burden. A true friend, in the Stoic sense, is not the one who's always there during happy times, but the one who reflects back what you may not want to hear, yet deeply need to face. They are not an echo chamber for what you wish to believe, but a clear mirror, revealing your thoughts from a more objective angle. Speaking to someone like this doesn't make you weak. It helps light the path within. Much like a traveler in darkness needs a lantern, not just a sympathetic hug. However, finding someone like that isn't easy. So before opening up, Ask yourself, does this person live by the values I respect? Are they grounded? Or are they themselves unsettled? Will they listen to understand or to evaluate? And most of all, will I feel lighter and clearer after speaking with them? If the answer is no, then the act of sharing becomes mere emotional overflow, and you risk reliving the pain once in your mind and once in your words. We don't need many people to confide in, just one. One person truly attuned, who listens with heart and responds with wisdom. Sometimes that's not a longtime friend or relative. It might be someone new, yet profoundly understanding. It could be a teacher, a mentor, or someone who's walked the very path you now face. And sometimes the most reliable witness is the journal you've never written in, because writing is also a form of speaking to yourself, honestly and without judgment. Speaking out is an act of release, but choosing the right person to speak to, that's an act of wisdom. It's how the Stoic remains awake amid chaos. They don't stay silent to suppress, nor speak impulsively to vent. They observe their inner world, name their emotions, then choose someone steady and deep enough to step into that world without shattering it. And when that person is found, the conversation becomes more than venting. It becomes a ritual of healing, a gateway to clarity and control. We live in an age where everyone talks, but few truly listen. And in a moment of inner crisis, what we need is not advice, but presence. Someone willing to sit beside us in silence, not to fix or analyze, but simply to be there as a witness to our unfolding. That person doesn't solve the problem for us. They offer space and trust so we can uncover the solution ourselves. In the process of stepping away from toxic people or situations, speaking to the right person also helps reinforce our resolve and sharpen our reason. Because when thoughts loop endlessly in the mind, we get lost in emotional fog. But when we're forced to articulate them clearly, deliberately, with focus, we begin to organize them. And if the other person is truly attuned, they won't answer for us. They'll ask instead, "What do you really want?" A simple question, yet powerful enough to awaken the memory of who we are, what we seek, and what's truly worth preserving. Stoicism doesn't make us cold or isolated. It calls us to be discerning, to choose our connections, choose when to speak, and choose how to share without surrendering our agency. Because in the end, our emotions are our responsibility. Others may listen, but no one can live for us. And when we've built the courage to look inward, to choose our relationships wisely, and to speak when it truly matters, that's when we cease to be victims of emotion and become the ones steering our emotional course. 4. Setting boundaries for emotions. Mastery, not suppression. Emotion is an inseparable part of the human experience. It is a vital signal nature has gifted us to feel, to connect, to respond to the world around us. But precisely because emotions are so raw, so intense, if they are not framed by reason, they can become waves that drown us in our most fragile moments. Stoicism doesn't deny the value of emotion, but it refuses to let emotion rule the inner life. Rather than suppress or avoid it, the Stoic learns to set boundaries, allowing emotion to exist, but never to dictate action. Many mistakenly believe that to live stoically is to extinguish all feeling, not to grieve, not to get angry, not to hurt. But that's a dangerous misconception. Suppression doesn't make emotions disappear. It simply pushes them inward, like a fire compressed, waiting to erupt with greater force. Emotional mastery isn't rigidity. It's knowing when to feel, when to pause, and when to act. It's control from within, not to appear strong, but to keep the mind clear, especially in the hardest of times. Imagine yourself as a sailor steering through a stormy sea. The waves of emotion, anger, hurt, and anxiety slam against the hull. If you let go of the wheel with every crashing wave, you'll go nowhere. But if you hold steady, keep your course, and observe the sea with calm eyes, no matter how violent the storm, you remain at command. The Stoic doesn't avoid the storm. They learn to navigate it without being overtaken. In daily life, we face countless emotions coming from all directions, from family, work, society, or unhealed wounds of the past. The truth is, no one is immune to being moved, but the difference lies here. The untrained mind lets emotion control behavior, while the wise observe emotion as a passing phenomenon, like watching clouds drift across the sky, knowing they'll pass and the sky will clear again. Setting boundaries for emotions does not mean becoming numb. It means limiting their influence over our decisions. Say you're hurt by a careless remark from someone close. The emotional reflex may be to retaliate, to lash out, or retreat into silence. But if you've practiced emotional control, you'll allow yourself to feel sadness, but within limits. You might say, I'll give myself 1 hour to sit with this feeling, to hear it out, and then return to reason and choose a thoughtful response. This is the strength Stoicism aims for, not chasing after feelings, nor ignoring them, but creating a clear space to feel and process. One helpful Stoic practice is writing down your emotions instead of acting on them. Writing forces clarity. What exactly are you thinking? Why do you feel this way? Where is it coming from? In doing so, emotion is slowly transformed into understanding, and behavior becomes more deliberate. Epictetus once said, "We are not disturbed by things, but by the views we take of them." That simple truth emphasizes the role of deliberate thinking. Every time an emotion rises, what matters is not avoidance, but choosing a new perspective, reducing its intensity and grip on our minds. Setting limits on emotion also strengthens our relationships. In any relationship, be it love, family, or work, if each person lets emotion lead, conflict becomes inevitable. But if both can pause and say, "I'm angry, I need 15 minutes to cool down and then we'll talk," that relationship gains a layer of protection against the storm. That is maturity, and it only comes when emotions are guided by reason. Still, emotional discipline is not a one-time act. It's a long journey. There will be days when you handle yourself well, calm, wise, compassionate, and there will be days when you erupt, lash out, say things you regret. That doesn't mean you've failed. What matters is recognizing where you crossed the line and how to adjust for next time. That's the true essence of mental training. Not becoming an emotionless machine, but moving closer to self-mastery day by day. Stoicism teaches that the greatest power isn't in controlling others, but in controlling yourself when facing them. When you set emotional boundaries, you teach others how to respect your mental space. That yes, you feel, but you won't let those feelings harm them. Yes, you may be sad, but you won't turn that sadness into a weapon. This is maturity, rare not because people don't want it, but because they've never been taught how to practice it. And now, if you're tired of being ruled by emotion, if you find yourself reacting on impulse and regretting it later, try giving yourself a small gift. Space to set boundaries. Each morning, ask, how will I respond if something unexpected happens today? Each night, reflect, was there a moment today when emotion overstepped its bounds? By holding this habit, you begin to build a resilient mind, one that feels deeply but stays grounded. And that is the sign of a true Stoic, full of feeling, yet always at the helm. 5. Consider the consequences. Let go with responsibility. Letting go carries two-faced liberation on one side, consequence, on the other. It is not simply walking away or ending something. It is an inner process filled with conflict, requiring clarity, courage, and above all, responsibility for one's own decisions. In today's world, we're often swept up by trends that promote letting go to feel lighter, or cutting ties to protect yourself. But Stoicism does not see letting go as an impulsive reflex. It defines it as a deeply rational act, one that must be weighed across several dimensions: inner stability, consequences, and impact on others. Because sometimes the cost of withdrawal is not peace, but the lingering burden of regret when we haven't fully understood what we're doing. Along life's path, there will be moments when we're forced to let go: a relationship, a friend, a memory, or even a part of who we used to be. But before that happens, the Stoic always pauses to ask, what happens if I let go? Is this an act of growth or a form of escape? Does it arise from clarity or from a fleeting emotion? And most importantly, does this decision align with the values I claim to live by? These questions are not meant to complicate, but to ensure that letting go does not come from weakness, but from a mind strong enough to own the consequences that follow. Letting go, if not examined carefully, can become a silent fracture in the mind. Some leave a relationship after a heated fight, thinking they've found relief, only to realize what they needed was a deep conversation that never took place. Others walk away from a job due to temporary stress, but long afterward, regret not giving themselves a chance to grow. Letting go without clarity traps us in a cycle of regret, a feeling Stoic philosophy urges us to avoid by living deliberately, starting from the present moment. One of the Stoics' most vital tools in the weighing consequences is negative visualization, premeditatio malorum, the practice of imagining the worst possible outcomes, not to be pessimistic, but to prepare the mind. Before choosing to let go, they ask, if I walk away from this person, how will I feel in a week, a month, a year? If I sever this tie, am I abandoning something valuable I can't yet see? If I choose freedom, will it bring peace or isolation? And if I stay, am I betraying myself? These imagined futures expand the mind beyond the grip of emotion, so that choices are no longer made by wounded ego, but by a matured reason accountable to self and others. Reflecting on consequences also preserves our inner ethics. It prevents our exit from becoming a source of harm, because some forms of letting go, when done without care, at the wrong time, or without clarity, leave wounds in others that take years to heal. A Stoic does not exit coldly or cruelly. They let go with sincerity, with explanation, and with closure that both sides can understand. They don't disappear into silence and leave the other guessing. They walk away with transparency, so the other may move on without confusion. This is the duty of the conscious human being, a responsibility not only to self, but to the world we affect. Careful reflection also protects us from impulsive decisions made in emotional extremes when we're too angry, too hurt, or too exhausted. These emotions are real, but they're not lasting. If we act before the mind stabilizes, we're not acting from reason. We're acting from pain, and any choice born of pain without reflection will sooner or later circle back. You heard us. That's why the Stoic delays important decisions until the inner waters are still, like a lake that needs time to clear after a storm. Only then do our reflections become honest and our choice responsible. Ultimately, responsible letting go is not about abandoning everything. It's about embracing change without losing yourself. It's not the act of someone defeated, but the step of someone who understands. Some things must end, so better things can begin. But to reach that point, we must dare to face what we've been avoiding. We need clarity to distinguish what we truly need from what we merely crave in the moment. And we need humanity to recognize that every choice we make, right or wrong, affects others, and therefore must be taken with maturity. If you now stand at a crossroads, torn between holding on or letting go, take time to look deeply within. Don't act while the heart is still storming. Don't cut ties before knowing exactly what you are letting go of. Ask yourself, if I choose to let go, can I accept the consequences? If not, what must I adjust so that, when I do walk away, I don't look back in regret? That's when you stop letting go from emotion and start letting go from wisdom. And wisdom always leaves peace in its wake. 6. Unplug for a while. Even the digital mind needs detox. We live in an age where everything is connected, yet it is this constant connection that's causing many to lose themselves. Each day, we open our eyes not to sunlight, but to the glow of a screen. Our minds are swept into messages, alerts, social media, negative headlines, and picture-perfect illusions before we've even had a moment of clarity. Personal space has nearly vanished, and inner stillness has become a rare luxury. Thousands of years ago, Stoicism urged us to return to ourselves, and in today's world, that wisdom would sound like this: disconnect so you can live truthfully with yourself. No one denies the benefits of technology. Thanks to the internet, we can learn anything, connect with loved ones far away, and work more efficiently. But it is precisely because we are always online that many people have never truly been present with themselves. They know what others are eating, wearing, or doing today, but have no idea how they themselves feel, what they are thinking, or what they truly need. Social media is designed to hold our attention for as long as possible, and that means it silently steals the precious moments of presence from our lives, bit by bit. A Stoic does not let themselves become a slave to any tool, even those deemed helpful. They don't reject technology, but they remain deeply aware of its limits and its impact on the mind. Just as the body needs rest to recover, the mind needs time, free from the weight of information, imagery, and comparison. Stoics choose to detox their minds by consciously retreating from the digital space, not out of disdain for the world, but out of reverence for the clarity within. Ask yourself, when was the last time you went a whole day without touching your phone? How many times have you picked up your device to check one thing, only to find yourself 15 minutes later scrolling through 3 different apps, absorbing dozens of irrelevant bits of content, and forgetting why you reached for it in the first place? That's not a lack of discipline. It's the natural result of an environment engineered to hijack your attention and manipulate your emotions. And if we don't consciously set boundaries, we soon forget what it means to truly live. One of the most harmful effects of constant connection is a fragmented mind. A notification breaks our focus. Someone else's success stirs our insecurities. Another's happiness makes us question our own lives. Over time, these subtle disruptions accumulate, leaving us drained without knowing why, lost but unsure of the cause. The Stoic understands the mind only regains its strength when given space to settle, to observe, to regenerate from within. And that space cannot exist in a life consumed by digital noise. This is why temporary disconnection is not an act of extremism. It's a ritual of mental renewal. It means turning off the phone for a few hours or days, whatever you can manage. It's intentionally stepping away from social media, from news feeds, from the constant consumption of information. It's spending that time doing slow, deliberate things, reading a paper book, writing in a journal, walking through nature, sipping tea in silence, or simply sitting alone, doing nothing. These seemingly trivial acts are actually medicine for presence, a way for the mind to find its natural balance again. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Our minds become what we repeatedly think about. Therefore, guard your thoughts like a sacred fire." In a time where every app competes to claim your mind, stepping back to guard your inner flame is an act of courageous resistance. You are not rejecting the world. You are simply choosing not to let it dictate what happens within you. And once you do, you'll feel it. Clarity returns. The mind lightens. Emotions settle. And most importantly, you begin to hear that inner voice again, the one long silenced by digital noise. Disconnecting also helps you recalibrate your values. Without the constant gaze of others, it becomes easier to see the difference between what you truly desire and what you've been chasing just to keep up. You begin to realize you don't need to know what's new in the world today. You only need to know how you feel inside. You'll come to understand it's not that others are living better lives. It's that you've forgotten how to live fully with yourself. And when you return to the digital space, you'll use it as a tool, not as a crutch for your loneliness. From a Stoic perspective, managing attention is managing life. Wherever your attention goes, results follow. If you place it in the noise, you'll harvest chaos. If you place it in stillness, you'll find peace. Disconnecting doesn't have to be a radical act. Start with just 30 minutes each morning without your phone, one evening a week without social media, one day a month to turn off the world and tune into yourself. Slowly, you'll restore the natural balance between being and connecting, between outer flow and inner rhythm, between consuming and truly showing up. And in that moment, you no longer live by the tempo of technology. You live by the cadence of your soul. 7. Focus on what truly nourishes you. In a world that moves at relentless speed, where everyone races to have more money, more connections, more experiences, more attention, there is one vital question few stop to ask. What truly nourishes me? Not what keeps me busy, not what makes me stand out, but what, even if small, makes me feel whole, steady, and at peace. Stoicism does not define wealth by material or power, but by the ability to live simply, to know what is enough, and to return to one's essential needs. The less we depend on the external, the stronger we become within. We often confuse gratification with nourishment. A new phone, a luxurious trip, a passionate romance. All of these may bring fleeting satisfaction. But once the novelty fades, we return to the same emptiness. True nourishment is usually quiet and understated. A peaceful morning with a book, a deep conversation, a brief midday meditation, a disciplined habit, maintained in silence. The Stoic does not chase what is flashy. They seek out what quietly strengthens the soul over time. Epictetus once said, "The wealthy are not those who have much, but those who need little." And in today's world, that wisdom rings truer than ever. External abundance has never guaranteed internal fulfillment. You can have hundreds of followers and still feel alone. You can have more money than you'll ever spend, yet feel something essential is missing. You can achieve a great deal and still not know why you're living. The problem then isn't scarcity. It's over-investing in what doesn't truly sustain us. The Stoic understands that to live deeply, one must live selectively. One must know which soil is fertile enough to grow a meaningful life. They don't try to do everything, know everyone, or keep up with every update. They choose a few things that matter and give them their full presence. It may be training the body, because health is the foundation of freedom. It may be writing daily as a form of honest self-dialogue. It may be nurturing one meaningful relationship, slowly and intentionally. instead of maintaining shallow ties with dozens of people who don't really know them. Less, but deeper. That's their way. And that's how they avoid wasting energy on the surface level things that excite, but do not transform. To focus on what truly nourishes also means saying no to what distracts, no matter how appealing. A lucrative opportunity that doesn't align with your values. A social event that leaves your mind cluttered. A relationship that stimulates temporarily but lacks real depth. The Stoic doesn't say no out of arrogance, but from awareness. Every time you say yes to something misaligned, you say no to what truly matters. Each refusal is a reminder of what you're living for, and it's that clarity, not accumulation, that builds inner strength. One powerful Stoic practice is to regularly write down 3 things: what's nourishing you right now, what's draining you, and what needs to be released. When you write, you sharpen your awareness of what quietly governs your inner state. You might realize it's those endless hours of scrolling that erode your focus, or that keeping up a weekly social obligation drains your spark, or that waking early and walking each morning is the very thing that keeps you anchored. This clarity is the first step to reorganizing life around what truly nourishes. It's also essential to understand that what nourishes you may change with time and season. The Stoic is not rigid. They observe their own evolution and adjust accordingly. At times, what you need most is rest and silence. At others, you need challenge and higher goals. What matters is one enduring principle. Anything you invest time and energy in must serve the development of your mind, the steadiness of your emotions, and the flourishing of your character. If it doesn't, it's merely a distraction disguised as duty or busyness. Once you begin to live this way, selectively, deeply, and with intention, you stop being pulled into the current of society. You no longer need to prove anything to any. You no longer fear being left behind. You are no longer ruled by outside expectations. Instead, you begin to feel a freedom that rises from within, one that no one can take from you once built through self-awareness. That is the root of sustainable peace. And when the mind is at peace, happiness no longer requires much, just a few things that truly matter. And that's enough. I'm not someone who lives a perfectly stoic life, but the longer I live, and the more I'm shaped by hardship, the more I see the value of returning to what's essential within. There were relationships I once held on to, out of fear of hurting someone, only to realize later that we were both being worn down by a grip we no longer needed. There were times I clung to social media, to the feeling of having to do something or be someone just to keep up. But the more I chased, the more exhausted and directionless I became. It wasn't until I stopped, disconnected for a while, wrote down what was happening inside, and asked myself, does this truly nourish me? That I realized I needed to live differently. I began practicing little by little, setting aside 1 hour a day without touching my phone, saying no to empty social obligations, stepping away from relationships that made me feel small. It wasn't easy, but each small choice brought more clarity, more lightness, and most importantly, I became friends with myself again. Stoicism hasn't made my life easier, but it has given me a powerful tool to face hardship with clarity and dignity. And I believe that if you begin today, even with the smallest change, you too will start to feel that quiet strength rising from within. The freedom you're looking for doesn't come from changing others or controlling circumstances. It begins the moment you choose to change yourself, to release what no longer nourishes you, and to walk toward a more conscious inner life. If this video resonated with you, don't let it fade as just a passing inspiration. Choose one thing, however small, and begin practicing today. Leave a comment below sharing what you most want to let go of right now. Because maybe, just maybe, writing it down is your first act of release. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss future videos on cultivating inner strength and lasting peace. There is so much more depth to explore together. And this journey, it's only just beginning. I'll see you in the next video.